Hi guys, it's Dylan from Bijou Diamond Jewellery in London with another watch video, and today we're taking a look at the Rolex Oyster Perpetual 39mm. Sorry for the lack of reviews recently. We've been super busy, slightly short-staffed as well, so I haven't really had time to do reviews. We're trying to get back to weekly videos again. We've missed being able to put up content for you guys, and it's always nice doing that leading up to Christmas as well. So let's start with this review. We're going to start with the history as always, and we're going to go back in time now to 1931. Back in the 1930s, well, prior to that, most watches, or actually in fact all watches, were manually wound. There was no such thing as a watch that was wound. Other than that, you had to actually physically wind it with the crown. But in 1931, Rolex set out to try and create an alternative way to wind a watch. They actually looked at designing a watch that was wound automatically, so a watch that actually was wound from the movement of your wrist, the motion of your wrist, which was completely unheard of, but it was a really fantastic concept that meant someone or the user didn't have to constantly wind their watch every single day. It was just naturally winding itself using the kinetic energy of your wrist. They actually went about doing that through using a metal rotor weight, and the rotor weight would spin as your watch would move, as your wrist would move, and that spinning rotor would then wind the movement. It only rotated in both directions, but it would only wind the movement in one certain direction, whereas nowadays most movements can wind the movement in both directions. The watch was therefore being perpetually wound, and all watches prior to, or the watches around the 30s from Rolex were called the Oyster watches. They featured that oyster case. So therefore, Oyster Perpetual, the name Oyster Perpetual, was born, perpetually wound watch in an oyster case. But the first Oyster Perpetual wasn't officially released until 1950 though. One of the early models was the bubble back. The bubble back meaning basically it features a bubbled case back or an enlarged case back, and that was so that it could fit this rotor weight inside the watch, because obviously it meant it needed a slightly deeper depth of watch to be able to fit that rotor inside, and therefore Rolex just added that bubble back on the back of the normal standard watch. Throughout the years, Oyster Perpetual has had many variations, many different dials, many different sizes as well, ladies' versions, but the biggest watch they ever made until 2015 was 36mm in the Oyster Perpetual line. But kind of around the mid 2000s, people were starting to look much more so at larger watch case sizes. So the Oyster Perpetual was definitely left behind for a long time. So in 2015, Rolex released the 39mm Oyster Perpetual, which is what we're looking at today, which brought it kind of in line with modern day case sizes, 39 being kind of the most perfect gentleman's size of watch case. So that was pretty popular after that. It's never been a super popular watch. The fantastic thing about the Oyster Perpetual is it's been a great entry-level watch. It often was available in boutiques for people to just walk in and buy. It never really had a waiting list, and it never really sold for over its retail price. The 39 was just a fantastic entry-level watch, as is 36 and the other variations of the Oyster Perpetual. This year, however, Rolex released the 41mm Oyster Perpetual and revamped 36, and now obviously the 39mm has been discontinued and the price has shot up on all of those. The price has obviously gone up quite a bit over retail or near retail on the 36 and the 41, because they're brand new models and people, obviously are feeling the hype of those watches now, and the new dials, the new movements, and the new the new model being the 41. So those will fetch a little premium now. Whether or not they will continue to do so, I'm not sure. But the 39mm, as it's been discontinued, whenever a watch gets discontinued from Rolex, people hype it up and sell it for lots over the list price. But that is just the market value of these watches at the moment. So they are selling for much more so than they were last year. They were selling for around 4 or 5 grand last year. Now they're selling much more, around 6 grand. So they've definitely gone up in price quite a bit, the 39mm. They are great looking watches and they're fantastic entry level watches as well. But the fact that they've gone up in price so much now means that they are kind of no longer an entry level model. They are also not particularly popular models, even though they've gone up in price loads. The sports models are still far more popular, like the Submariner, the GMT Master, the Daytona. So therefore, Whether or not they'll sustain these higher prices and continue popularity, I'm not sure. We'll just have to wait and see what. So that concludes the history. Let's take a look now at the features of this watch, and we're going to start, as always, with the clasp. The clasp on this watch is a slightly different variation of the Oyster clasp. It doesn't feature the fold over section like the standard Oyster clasps do. This one also is, of course, in all brushed finish as well, and kind of has this kind of deep laser or engraved etched logo, like crown logo, rather than the raised crown logo that we usually have from Rolex on the Oyster clasp, which I actually think looks really great. I really love the clean, simple design of this clasp. I do prefer the fold over section because it just adds that extra layer of security. This one, it's easier to pop this clasp open, but they usually reserve that Oyster clasp with the fold over section for the sportier models like Daytona, Submariner, or Yachtmaster, the ones that are actually intended for sports use, whereas this model is much more of a kind of classic model, so it's not intended for such sporty uses. So it doesn't require like a more secure clasp. But it's a great looking clasp, very simple, very easy to use. Will definitely not wear out over time. It's a fantastic looking clasp. It's nice and low profile as well. I love the fact that that indented logo means that it's not going to be quite as much of a scratch magnet as the older raised logo or the other style raised crown logo. Yeah, really cool clasp. Moving on to the bracelet now, we've got a standard Oyster bracelet with all brush finish. It's my favorite variation of an Oyster bracelet. I love the all brush finish. I think it suits the watches really nicely. It doesn't tend to look so bad after a while as well, of a good amount of use and wear. The polished center links on standard Oyster bracelets tend to get scratched pretty easily and tend to make the watch look kind of old and not so good pretty quickly, whereas these brushed bracelets actually look fantastic for a very long time. It's also much easier for us to bring that back to kind of new look, or looking new, as the brush is easier to put into a watch and mask scratches and dents than it is on a polished watch or polished bracelet. Moving now onto the case, we've got a 39mm case size on this watch. Fantastic case size, I'd say the ideal case size in the whole watch industry. This is just the most perfect case size, in my opinion. I think it suits a range of wrists from 13 centimeters in circumference all the way up to in the 20s. It just suits such a wide range because it is just such a pure classic shape and size. The case is half brushed, half polished. The sides of the case are polished finish and the tops of the case are brush finish, which looks really nice. Obviously suits the bracelet and ties it into the bracelet. Everything on this watch is kind of rounded, like the bezel as well is polished dome bezel. Everything's kind of just soft lines. It's really elegant soft lines. It's not sharp edged like a Submariner, or GMT Master or Yachtmaster. It's much softer than that and therefore lends itself more so to a more classic design or style, or slightly more dressy feel. Moving now on to our dial, we've got a lovely blue sunburst dial on this watch. I'd say this is one of the best dials they make for this model. I also love the grey dial, kind of rhodium effect dial they make for this model as well, or made for this model. But I'd say blue is one of my favorites. The grey is just a little bit more classic, a bit more understated, kind of ties itself into the rest of the watch maybe a bit better than this blue. I love the fact they've put sunburst as well on these watches, as they are technically entry-level Rolexes. And to see something, of that complexity and that beauty that's usually only reserved for the higher end models in the collections, to see that on an entry-level model is really nice. So I love that about that. The only thing I don't love about this style is the green accents. I think it definitely adds to that sporty feel of the watch and helps to make it feel more sporty. But actually, I think if they made it a darker, maybe red or orange, a very deep color, a different tone of blue perhaps, or even just black, it would have made the watch feel a bit more smarter, a bit more, maybe made it a bit more versatile as well. This watch does still nonetheless look great with just a casual look, shorts, t-shirt, or even going to the gym, and also wearing it with a smarter look. But the green definitely takes away from that smarter look a little bit more so. That concludes the features. Let's take a look at whether or not I would own this watch. I would definitely own this watch. I would definitely own this 39mm variation. I think I would possibly look at 36mm variation as well. I think all across the line are going to do really brilliantly, and they're going to appeal to different audience. The 36, the 39 now discontinued, and the 41, and of course the smaller sizes as well. I think they're going to find their owners, each one, people are going to love that size. But personally, I just think that 39mm really sat as a real sweet spot for most people, and it's a shame to see it gone now. It would have been great to see all these new dials that we have on the 36 and the 41 on this 39mm. But yeah, nonetheless, great watch. I would definitely own it. It's fantastic size, great case shape and design, very elegant, very slick. Love the bracelet, love the clasp, suitable for most occasions and most looks. One thing I change is the green, but overall a fantastic watch that you really can't go wrong with. It's a shame now that the prices have been pumped up on these because they're no longer really an entry-level watch. You know, around £6 is not really entry level anymore. You're moving into Submariner money, and you know, you're moving towards kind of bigger, higher end sports models that are much more desirable than an Oyster Perpetual. But yeah, overall great model, and I think it's a fantastic watch that suits many, many wrists. Thanks guys for watching. Let us know in the comments what you think of the Oyster Perpetual 39mm, 36 and 41. Let us know what other watches you'd like us to review. And as always, if you're interested in this watch or any other watch in the Rolex collection, don't hesitate to contact us. Our details are in the description, and also at the end of the video. It'd be a pleasure to call these watches into stock for you.